Starting out, we have the gang pulling up to a reserve with a familiar man waving at them. It was Wes Green, the guy who'd helped when Max was in the hospital that one time from Rojo. The kids got out to greet him and say hello as Charmcaster, whom hadn't met yet, simply walked out of the rust bucket rather than rushing, and said hello with Max joining them. Wes asked if they were interested in hearing the local legends and learning more about his people, which Charmcaster stated that it was good to learn myths of other cultures for magical training, and suggested that she and Gwen both would benefit from it, while Ben just sort of went along with it. They began touring around as he told them about the legends of the trinkets such as the dream catcher, and we do get the scene where Ben sees Kai for the first time. However, it's kind of hard to tell what kind of reaction he has. It's more surprise to him that he'd actually meet another plumber's kid himself. Ben does not try to say he wanted to see a traditional dance of any kind. More so, he's simply curious, stating that he didn't think he'd actually meet anyone else his age that has a connection to the plumbers. While the skies around them start to change with a purple light, and it starts to rain on them, all with purple lightning hitting the ground beside them. The lightning strikes the ground again as a wolf-like creature appears, growling at the group, though they quickly turn away and run off as we get the flash flood scene from the show. However, with Charmcaster there was no need for Ben to save the day, as she quickly created a bubble around Kai that made it lift into the air, before floating her over to a roof of a building and making it set her down there. We later on see the group talking about the Yenodushi, which he'd explained was a type of werewolf, though Charmcaster states she'd never seen any werewolf like that before in her studies, even from the text of the Navajo, though Wes says they were going to bag it, with Max and Ben chiming in that they'd go too. Kai wants to go too, however Wes responds that he's not going to risk losing the only family he has left, and that the village would need her should anything happen to him, and asks if Charmcaster and Gwen would stay behind to protect her granddaughter and his village, to which the two of them nod. The scene with Ben, Max, and Wes plays out the same here, with him transforming. Though he'd tried Cannonbolt, he got Wildvine instead, and saved his grandfather and his friend before then using his roots to pull himself back up to the top, with Max telling Wes he'll explain everything. Ben hits the Omnitrix symbol and goes from Wildvine to Diamond Head, telling the werewolf to bring it on, as he'd slammed his fist in the ground, making several crystals appear that shot out, knocking them back into a cliffside before then walking over and grabbing their face, telling them they're not so tough. As they bit his hand in response, though it didn't hurt, it did surprise him as he'd pulled his hand back, telling him that wasn't cool. Shortly after, Ben timed out, and the wolf then swung their claw at him, striking the watch, making the light on it turn yellow before running up as Max and Wes were calling out and running over. He looked at the watch, seeing the yellow light as the dial was spinning, making him confused, and saying, "Oh, what now?" with a sigh. Ben does not ask about Kai here, though he does question where everyone was going, as Wes explained that they were leaving because of the Yenodushi, as the full moon tonight would make it more powerful, though Charmcaster just shakes her head at the statement. Reminding them that he'd smacked them around his Diamond Head, Ben suggests that they might not see it again, with Kai mentioning that she'd been told what Ben did back there by her grandfather and thanked him for helping. Really just having any reason to gloat, Ben tells her that he's kind of a hero basically 24/7, and asked if she knew anything about the plumbers too, as they began to walk off and chat together, leaving Gwen confused. Kai asks Ben what things he's actually done, and he then responds, "Well, we've stopped thugs, criminals, robots, mutated monsters, Vilgax, Charmcaster's crazy uncle." That last part made Charmcaster throw an energy sphere at the back of his head, hitting him with it, and making him turn back towards her, and apologize while holding the back of his head. Ben's skin then turns blue as his hair grows a bit, with everyone staring at him. Wes asked if he was bitten, to which Ben responds that he was, but he didn't even pierce Diamond Head's crystals at all, and looks confused about what was going on. Wes tells them about how to dispel the curse by his tribal legends, though Charmcaster says she'll check her books to see if there's any other possible way to dispel the curse that he might not know of, but that they should still try it his way just in case she can't find anything. While they were looking for the information, Ben grew larger and more muscular while his face became more wolf-like. Wes was walking up telling them that the werewolf was spotted attacking a station and that they needed to track it down immediately. Gwen says that they should let her and Kai find the cactus while they went after the werewolf, to which they'd agreed and split up, Ben and Kai turning their heads and saying be careful at the same time, with Gwen in between them. While Kai was looking at Ben, we see that Ben was more looking at Gwen. We get the scene where the guys are tracking the werewolf and Ben almost being shot because of being mistaken for them, with Charmcaster showing up soon after saying she'd found a spell to get rid of the curse and tried to use it on Ben, though it didn't work, leaving them no choice but to try it Wes's way. We get Ben fighting with the werewolf scene, and we finally get the sonic howl that we'd seen in the show. Ben was about to hit the watch only to find that it was no longer there, confusing them. But they continued to fight with the werewolf as Gwen and Kai show up with the cactus they'd needed to defeat the werewolf. Unlike in the show, the werewolf doesn't react to the pendant, and so Wes is able to press it against their heart, only for nothing to happen, confusing them as they then threw Max off of them, as well as Ben, before letting out another of their sonic howls, blowing everyone back against the cliffside before running off. Ben starts to go after them, but something causes him to drop to the ground, howling out in pain as his clothing changed and the Omnitrix symbol appeared on his stomach. Charmcaster stating, "That's why we couldn't dispel the curse, because he's not a werewolf, he's an alien." We get the scene with the lava, however, with Charmcaster there, they didn't need to run from it, as she'd casted an icy wind that cooled the lava before it reached them. They still did have to jump the gap though, as Ben grabbed Kai and Gwen and jumped across the gap, with Charmcaster creating a floating platform, lifting herself, Max, and Wes over to the other side while Ben timed out and showed them that he had the new werewolf transformation in the roster. When they are attacked later on by the werewolf, Ben hits the watch and we get the battle of Cannonbolt versus the werewolf, which plays out mostly the same, though Ben says that he and Charmcaster can deal with the lava flow and the werewolf, telling the others to get out of there. Charmcaster created a barrier above the group so they could run, and once inside the tunnel began casting another of the icy wind spells, though the lava was too much as it just kept coming. The others turned back once safely outside and see that the tunnel had been collapsed, though they quickly felt the ground shaking underneath them as Cannonbolt shot from the ground and landed, opening up with Charmcaster complaining about how much it stinks inside his shell. Wes later thanked them after he'd found out some of the people were returning. Ben just says it's what they do while stretching out, as Wes offers souvenir and leading Max away. We get Ben talking to Kai, saying that maybe they'd see each other again with how long the summer was. Kai mentions that Ben seems nice, but he wasn't her type, to which he just looks confused by that. She'd said the alien stuff was cool and all, but not as cool as being the Yanadushi because she could tame him and train him, and that got Gwen mad. Gwen then grabs Kai by the shoulder, calling her a bitch and punching Kai outright in the face, going off about how Ben is a person, not some pet, before grabbing Ben by the shirt collar and dragging him away. We later on get a conversation while they were all on the road again, with Gwen asking if Ben was okay, to which he confusedly asked her why he wouldn't be. They'd mentioned about Kai, while we see Max watching the conversation through the rearview mirror, with Charmcaster turned around in the seat. Ben just starts laughing, telling her he just thought it was cool to know someone else who had a relative that was a plumber, stating, "Besides, there's no comparing to you anyway," making Gwen blush a bit.